Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please take time to observe a few moments of silence. Thank you. Okay, we'll begin with the roll call. We're beginning with Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
I'm here. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stephen.
Present.
And
by phone.
Okay, by phone. And Commissioner Mike Smith is at a conference this morning. All right, public comment. We have no public comment today, so we're going to move right on to administrative business. Mr. Lothar, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, no administrative business today. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Commissioner Cobb?
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple things.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I have a question for the county administrator. Were you contacted by any of our district representatives concerning House Bill 2036 within the last 30 days?
I think that Representative Beeler had sent me an email, but other than that, no.
So you were not contacted by any other representatives other than our Beeler?
That's correct.
Okay, and then I have a couple other questions related to this House Bill 2036 and the things that have been put out on social media. The statistics that have been used as far as how many veterans are in Leavenworth County, can you tell me your source for the number that you gave and what that number was?
Sure. I think the information that I had provided was there are approximately 8,900 and, well, I shouldn't say approximately. According to the U.S. Census Bureau's website, there are 8,994 veterans in Leavenworth County. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 27% of all veterans have some form of disability rating. On the U.S. Census Bureau's website, if you click on the information button next to that number of veterans, it explains how they count veterans, and it is not active duty military. So I know that somebody had made the assertion that I had included that in my numbers, and that is not the case.
So let me get that straight in my mind. You're saying that active duty is counted apart from that number?
Yes, active duty would not be included in veterans.
Okay, so in other words, the statistics and numbers and projections and revenue loss estimates that you gave us, you stand behind those?
I absolutely do.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Doug, do you have anything to add?
Mike, do you know which current bill or which part of that bill are they trying to get passed? Is it still going to be under the Homestead Act?
I just came from the breakfast, which was the legislative update, but I'll have more information on that next week. I don't have that yet, though.
Well, how soon will it be voted on?
I don't know.
Well, I would, if this gets voted on and passes, and it's not under the Homestead Act, I was hoping maybe a couple of the commissioners could get an appointment with the governor to try to explain the impact this is going to have on Leavenworth County before she signs it. I mean, it's our job, it's our duty to protect the citizens of Leavenworth County, and it's probably going to cause a tax increase for non-veterans in this county.
Drastic increase.
I would agree with you. If that happens, we need to reach out.
We need to reach out to the governor, and And if we're going to be compensated, that's fine. But if it's going to, the version of the bill that passes where it's not going to be under the Homestead Act, we need to do what we can to protect our citizens.
And I think that no one should misunderstand that. I'm not speaking for anybody but myself as a commissioner, but I think I know where all the rest of us are. Is we all support veterans.
Absolutely. And I support the folks on fixed income who can't afford their taxes, who've been paying taxes in this state all their lives. At least 50 years.
Well, I can say that as for myself, I completely support our veterans. My father was a Vietnam veteran that served over 20 years and was also disabled as a result of Agent Orange. So I am a huge supporter of our disabled veterans. So some of the things that we have concerns about have nothing whatsoever to do with the lack of support for veterans. And I think that Mr. Lothry had something he wanted to say.
Yes, and Commissioner Smith brought up the Homestead Act. I just wanted to point out the other thing in this that, the comment that somehow we're against veterans. In the current Kansas Homestead Act, disabled veterans are already covered. This legislation isn't new. What's new about it is, one, an expansion, because in the current Homestead Act, disabled veterans are covered in homes up to $350,000 of value and $50,000 of income. So what this would do would expand it past the $350,000 threshold for the home value and the income. But more importantly, it shifts the cost of the tax rebate from the state to local government. And I don't understand the concept of why our representative in Topeka is promoting that they shift this burden back onto the counties and cities and school districts, local taxing entities, when it's already at the state level. They could have amended their legislation to increase this new threshold that in fact, he took the income level completely off. So no, regardless of income and regardless of home value, that was his proposal. But I don't understand the significance of shifting it to local taxing entities when the state is saying they have all this surplus and they're the ones trying to give it away, not us. Just a rough estimate, just our portion of those taxes. For the taxpayers who are left, and it would be different because of valuations, but you would shift the taxes back to the remaining taxpayers, and just for our share of it would probably be between $60 and $70 per household in Leavenworth County. And that I'm including commercial as well, because there's about 31,000 parcels that pay taxes in Leavenworth County. So that's just us. That's not the schools. That's not the townships. That's not the cities. So it's significant. You would notice it on your taxes. This isn't like a $1 or $2 thing that you would pick up so that you could assist, your neighbors. No, this is something it already exists in the Homestead Act. They already have it for veterans, $50,000 income or less, and $350,000 home value. So that already exists. This is just an expansion and a shifting of the burden from the state to the local taxing entities.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have anything?
I just can't believe that someone would not want to pay taxes and use all the services, if you can afford it. And if you can't afford it, there is the Homestead Act. So.
Well, I have a hard time adjusting to the fact that we have people that are elected to represent us in Leavenworth County that are comfortable with not representing the interests of the residents, entire population of Leavenworth County.
And if part of that has the business, if you compete with government, that's going to be huge also. I mean, there's going to be nobody left paying taxes except for a few.
And it's going to be a lot.
And it's going to be a lot. I mean, we've already took a pretty good hit with, the CCA closing down. We haven't got anything to replace it. So.
Oh, and then I do want to recognize yet again that we did have Senator Pittman, who came last week and did visit with us and talk to us about the concerns that we had. And I just want to express my appreciation for that. And I want to make clear that opportunity was presented to our other representatives along with an opportunity for them to pick a different day, or time that we would be willing to adjust our schedule to meet their schedules, and we were not taken up on our offer, but Senator Pittman did accept the invitation and did come and visit with us, and I sincerely appreciate that, and I think that,
I have one more question for Commissioner Stevens while he's at this conference. Commissioner Stevens, you still there?
Yeah.
You said you went to the legislative update meeting?
Yeah, I just got out of it, and now we're on a 30-minute break.
Okay. Is there any discussion about funding the government other than property tax? Is there any discussion on sales tax, income earnings tax, or anything like that?
They did not have a discussion on that, but they had a very long discussion on LABTR, and there's apparently 84 votes in the House when it was voted on in the House in favor of adding LABTR. It was dropped off in the conference committee, and apparently there's not support in the Senate right now. So that seems to be the holdup on the LABTR. Then we had a long discussion on the 4% property tax cap on SDR 1611, and that's quite a debate because the Kansas Association of Commissioners, unfortunately, is lobbying on the wrong side of that, in my view. They're opposing that relief, and we had quite a debate among the folks that were in the room, and I think they're going to take it to their next governing board to see where I don't think they've actually had a vote of commissioners to decide what our position is, but our lobbyists are lobbying against it, and we brought up, people in Leavenworth County are having 27% increases in 1 year. We've got to have a change. And so that was a big debate point. But as far as other sources, they didn't get to that, and they also did not get to the veterans issue. They had like 45 minutes, so that was kind of ran out of time.
Well, pretty soon they're going to have to come up with something else besides property tax if they're going to keep exempting every session more and more people not paying them.
Mike, did they say why they are against the 4% cap?
They made the argument, that it wouldn't be equal, but I did point out to them that properties convey every 7 years, so it would catch up. They said that there'd be people that have been there 20 years that are paying less taxes than someone else. That was one argument. And then they made an argument about the commercial rates. They feel like over time that would be fair. So, you know what? This has been going on for so many years that if we don't get something through now, we'll probably have to wait 3, 4, 5 more years. I don't think people can wait anymore.
I don't either.
But
I think we've hit rock bottom.
Not everybody has. I don't think not everybody in the state is as animated on this issue as our Leavenworth County folks.
Well, originally they were concerned that it would put us back in a reappraisal situation where we had inequities between valuations of property, and the system now keeps everybody's value up current every year. Well, if they put a 4% cap on it and say the appraiser wanted to raise that person's value 20%, well, then in 5 years it would get caught back up to 20%. So eventually we would not be in a reappraisal situation.
wow.
I think there was some confusion among some people in the room about whether the current appraisal system would change, and really this still doesn't change the current appraisal system. It just puts a cap on the increases.
And they were also talking about it would cut down on the appraisers' employees. They could possibly get rid of some appraisers, but I told them that's not going to work because you still have to have what the current value is on every property. You would keep sort of 2 different databases. You would keep what the value should be and what the cap values would be. So then if property conveyed, you would put it to the current market value right at the sale.
Well,
So that's another way it wouldn't get to a reappraisal.
Yep.
we're not
Talk
going
this all day.
Yeah.
So the lobbyists admitted that if it went to the voters, the lobbyists for the association believe it would pass. So that's kind of a contradiction, lobbying against it and telling us that if it went to the voters, it would pass. So anyway, we got some work to do in our association.
Okay.
Well, I'm proud of our commissioners that have stood up and have done our best to educate the rest of
This is a serious deal.
Yes.
This is big. This is huge.
All right, well, if there's no other admin business, let's move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Anything need to be removed first?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Culbertson.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Stephen?
Even with I.
All right, formal board action. We're to consider a motion to award bid to Barclay Asphalt Company for mill overlay and patchwork to the Health Department parking lot in an amount not to exceed $124,610 with $100,000 funded through the ELC grant.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
As most of you know, Jamie Miller is always diligent about finding grant money, and this is no exception to that. He has located grant funding from the ELC grant in the tune of $100,000, which is a bulk of what it would take to mill and overlay. What I'm asking for is the $100,000 ELC grant, the $10,000 coming out of the Health Department Equipment Reserve, and $14,610 coming from the Capital 215 account to pay for the entire cost of the mill overlay and patchwork out at Jamie's Health Department. So we received multiple bids on opening day. Both bids that we received came in under engineer's estimate. We're looking to move forward on this as Jamie has to have this completed and billed before the 30th of June for him to use the grant funding.
We don't want
Well,
to
we don't wanna
lose the
lose
grant
that,
funding
so-
for sure. Thank you, Jamie, by the way. Any questions?
No. Well, not on this project.
Okay. Any? Well, that's what we're talking about.
Commissioners, I might.
Well, it's sort of. It relates to this project.
I would suggest that maybe you just round that to $130,000, not to exceed amount, in case as they start doing some of the patching, if anything else comes up, just to allow a little flexibility.
You might find some spots that's got to be treated differently in that parking lot.
How we expected to treat that was with recommendation from Joe McAfee. He put a recommendation out on we will mill everything 2 inches, and then the cracks that are still there, we took a linear feet measurement of everything that's visible now. When you mill down 2 inches, some of those will go away. Anything that's there additionally, we'll take an additional 2 inches off of that, and then petromat it down, which will 18-inch wide across the crack, and then fill that 2 inches back, and then a full 2-inch lift over the entire parking lot in one pass. So everything gets laid at one time.
Okay.
But
Because you don't know what's under there. We inherited that parking lot. We don't know what
an additional $6,000. My goal is to keep it right at $124,610.
Well, we don't like surprises, so. You ready for a motion?
I'm
then?
ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we award the bid to Barclay Asphalt Company for a mill and overlay at the Health Department parking lot in the amount not to exceed $130,000 with $100,000 funded through the ELC grant.
Second.
The motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Culbertson.
Aye.
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 Commissioner
Aye.
Stevens? Okay.
Okay. I did have a question on the
Okay.
other annex parking lot in the old EMS building on Wyoming Road.
Yes, sir.
Is there any plans on that parking lot? Because
You'll see it in my 2024 budget.
we were putting Band-Aids on that parking lot back in the 90s.
I had Vince go out and take a look at it because Jamie and I had discussed about what the options were on patching it, If you look at it currently, the soft spots that you have in the area where the dumpsters are, that's basically going to be a Band-Aid and waste of time on money. It will be in my 2024 capital improvement budget to remove and replace. And if that's something that you guys wish to have in there, we'll get her done in 2024.
It's going to need a total rehab.
Yes, sir, it is.
Because, I mean, we were patching it in the 90s.
Yes,
I
sir.
guarantee you, in the late 90s, it was failing, and
At some point, I'll look at whether it will be cheaper for us to remove the asphalt and go back with the concrete, or if it will be cheaper to go back with remove everything, recompact, put down, and do an asphalt base with the size of the vehicles that they have that go through that area with Jamie's heavier ambulances, with the fire trucks that go there for training and that. Asphalt might not be our best option, but I will work with Jamie as well as engineer downstairs for best options for a long term.
you have a garbage truck that pulls in there too.
Yes, sir.
Now we've kicked this can way too long down the road on this one.
I don't disagree.
And is there any thought on this adding additional parking at the annex? Does that parking lot need to be expanded?
Currently, at the annex down south, their traffic isn't significant. The end of the month, beginning of the month, they
Right.
might see some traffic issues. An expansion at that time, I can get you head count numbers on a daily on what they pull in at one time, and then I can get back with you on parking spaces.
I've
That's
just
something you'd
noticed,
like.
like you said, at the end of the month, beginning of the month, it's pretty crowded and looks like there's people parking in the grass. But then the rest of the time, it's probably adequate. So anyway, I'm sure we'll have this discussion in budget time.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, we still have some people paying taxes. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. Come on down, Ms. Jamie. We need to consider a motion to approve the request to renew Adult Corrections Advisory Board appointments as recommended.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
As you all know, we have been doing audits of our memberships of both advisory boards, and we had several members expiring on the Adult Corrections Board. So this morning, we're just coming before you to request that we renew the appointments that were previously made for Chris Thomas, Dr. Roger Bonner, and Dr. Vernon Fields, who have been consulted and stated that they would remain on the boards if you choose to reappoint them. Alternatively, we also did advertise that position. It's on our county site since February 16th.
Any questions for Jamie?
No?
Mike, do you have any questions for Jamie?
You said you did advertise it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you get any? You didn't get any forms, right?
No applicants.
Sorry. Story of everyone.
If we don't have any other questions, do I have a motion? Makes a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the request to renew Adult Corrections Advisory Board appointments as recommended.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion is second. I'll begin voting with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Now we need to consider a motion to approve the request to renew Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board appointments as recommended.
Well, as y'all know, we also came up with some appointments that needed attention on the JCAB. The appointments that need attention and have expired were that of Commissioner Doug Smith, Amy Bateman, and Willie Williams. All three were consulted in February, and at that time were interested in renewing their appointments. Shall you decide to reappoint them? Although, Commissioner Smith, you might have changed your mind since then. So I don't know if you're going to pawn this off on someone else now. But
No, looking forward to it.
no other
Do we still have a
applicants for this
JCAB?
board either.
No other applications, correct?
No.
Okay. Any questions for Jamie? Okay, then,
You ready for a motion?
sure.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the request to renew Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board appointments as recommended.
Second.
A motion and a second. I'll begin voting with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Now, we need to consider a motion to approve the application for FY24 Adult Comprehensive Plan Grant.
Well, as you know, this is our annual state grant that funds the majority of our adult community corrections. This year, we are requesting $432,207. We are requesting an additional FTE for a coordinator for the third year in a row. If you read it, you will see that I did point this out in the application, that this is our third year requesting this position, and it is the question I have every year. There are 6 agencies that have vastly different population sizes who are all receiving more funding for us than we are, either from the behavioral health grant itself or just their regular allocation. So I know County Administrator Mark had also requested information about how they're calculating this amount every year, and we've yet to see the calculation, but I know I have questions. When our average daily population of offenders is 150 and another agency in a neighboring county is about 35, why do we only get $90,000 more than them? Why are our caseloads for one of my officers larger than their entire community's population of offenders? So I'm hopeful that this year they will approve that and fund us the way they should have been.
Ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion. Wait, let's see if Commissioner Stephen has any questions for Jamie first.
No, I don't have any questions, but I do agree with what she said.
Okay.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application for year 24 Adult Comprehensive Plan Grant.
Second.
A motion and a second. I'll begin voting with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we need to consider a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 Adult Comprehensive Plan Budget Amendment, receiving an additional $19,618.93.
So every year, money that is unexpended by all of the agencies in the states, that stays, with each county, and they just reduce the allocation and put that back in a big pot for KDOC, and then they just decide how they're dispersing it. You have to be compliant with their financial rules and in good standing with all of our financial reporting each quarter. We did qualify. They sent us $19,618.93. We are using that funding to attend the National Drug Court Conference. We are using that funding to purchase some office supplies, group supplies for next year, in hopes to manifest that we're going to get that additional funding from the state.
Ready for a motion? No, I don't have any questions.
Anybody have any other questions for Jamie?
I'm glad we got this money.
Yes, then I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve FY23 Adult Comprehensive Budget Amendment, receiving the additional funds of $19,618.93.
Have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to presentations and discussion items with our quarterly report. So, Jamie, stay seated and report away.
Well, I know I really bogged you all down with the reading, but so far we're doing as well as we typically are this time of year. Of course, on our juvenile side, we always have issues with parental engagement and our term limits. We have the shortest juvenile probation term limits in the whole country because of our juvenile reform, so we have less time with them, and unfortunately parents aren't on probation and sometimes they're just not bought into the process. So our numbers, every year are reflecting of that. If only 33% of kids are successful, then that's as much as we can do. We can't force parents. We continue to offer them opportunities, but here we are. And this quarter alone, they had 51 referrals to our new Youth Justice Resource Center programs. We've had some really great feedback from parents in tears at the Parent Project programming. Just thankful that facilitators are out there teaching support groups for parents who are dealing with issues related to behavior. And we want to continue offering that. But unfortunately, the parents who are often attending those classes are not the parents of youth that are on probation. So prevention works, but the people who really need it sometimes are the people that we're missing.
Is it like grandparents or relatives attending for these folks?
So for Parent Project or Strengthening Families, it's really just the guardians in the household or anyone struggling with parenting responsibilities. But the struggles that we have on probation are separate because those are whoever the legal guardian is, and it might look different. But we invite any of the family to join youth on their probation because we would like to see the values that the court is instilling in these youth and the programs that we're trying to help address behaviors be reinforced in the home. But unfortunately, parents spend the majority of time with kids, and if they're telling them something different and they're not reflecting the values that the court has, they're going to have a greater influence. And I think that has everything to do with our lack of success on the juvenile side. And I think that has been a historical issue. That's my juvenile plan. We're also looking good on the funding. KDOC, if you look at the financial reconciliation report, they don't even understand why things aren't matching up, but they did double check and everything matches on our end, so it's likely just something in their formula sheet that's not working out. But we're in good standing. Like I said, they give us unexpended funds, and we're doing well as far as where we are and what we've spent for our prevention as well. So all of our funding, everything on the juvenile side looks very good. And if y'all don't have questions, I'll move to my adult report.
Any
I
questions?
have a question.
Go ahead.
I know I forgot this question probably doesn't have to come, but of the juveniles, how many of them are impacted either in their family or personally with the effects of drug and alcohol use?
Well, a majority of them are. I would say, if not all of them. I think what we are seeing in this country is that it is a generational issue, and we know that if you're, raised in a household struggling with addiction, you're more likely to struggle with an addiction as an adult. And I think it's very difficult when kids are coming to report to community corrections for drug tests and they smell like drugs and they come in and they're like, well, I'm clean, but my parents were using drugs on the way here. I mean, this is a real epidemic, and it's just the reality. Again, we only spend as much time as we do every week or every other week with these kids for 6 months. But they go home to parents who there's just not a lot of resources out there for uninsured, underinsured, and there's still a huge stigma. We have adults on probation who would rather be felons who are labeled drug addicts than to deal with the issues that cause them to use and to self-medicate. People don't want to get that mental health treatment that they need. And you can teach people to be clean, but if they're not dealing with their own feelings, those feelings are going to lead them to use again. And, parental stress is a huge warning sign for parents. And predominantly, mothers are more likely to relapse as a result of parental stress. So it's a vicious cycle. And then when parents get clean, they feel guilt and shame of being a drug addict in front of their kids and exposing their kids. And then, they go back to the drug that made them feel guilty and shamed when they were sober, and it just continues.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I think this is really an issue where we really need the engagement of people. I know you're talking about the values of the court, the values and of course the values of the court are one thing, but the values, and you can't say this, but I can say this, is the breakdown of the family and breakdown of moral and religious training in the home has really impacted all of these areas, and I think that's one thing I think it's our job to point that out, and also to try to encourage, faith-based organizations, and churches, and local community groups to help with these things.
Thank you. And I was going to say something later, but I'm going to interject a little bit, and I think this is going to be a great thing for the Leavenworth community, is that the city of Leavenworth last evening, approved to fund for 3 years a Big Brothers and Big Sisters program for the community of Leavenworth, and I think that having those mentors available is going to be an incredible boost for the kids that are struggling with, within our community, whether they're involved with the legal system or not, and to prevent them from becoming involved. So kudos to the city of Leavenworth.
I agree.
That's wonderful. The Kaiser Permanente studies, which are the longest studies on adverse childhood experiences and how they impact you and your functioning later in adulthood, recognize that all it takes is one positive adult figure in a child's life, one positive adult to build resilience against addiction.
Right.
All it takes is one person to recognize, that this kid is a product of their environment, and to build them up instead of judge them and cast them out as a kid in poverty or a troublemaker, and to just embrace kids in their home that are struggling as a result of their environments, I think is really something that all of the kids and the community could benefit from.
Right.
So, on the adult side, this year we are doing a little bit better than expected. We had 39 offenders closed out this past quarter, and 11 of them were returned back to the communities where they came from. So we're sending less to KDOC and sending more back to their communities to make those decisions and invest resources in their own offenders. We are working diligently, as you can see in the comp plan as well as in our quarterly report, to have a positive quality assurance audit next year. We're the last agency. We've been postponed, and I know that we're the first district, and as a competitive person, I'd like us to have one of the best scores, just as we did for our #1 ranking on our use of the behavioral health screening tool. And I think knowing how all the other agencies have fared and who the state believes has exceptional policies and exceptional just examples of practices, I've been reaching out to those directors. To this point, only 4 other agencies have had green lights. It's green, yellow, or red, and then they have corrective action plans that you have either 90 days or 6 months to address things you need to change. It can impact funding, but I have all the hope in the world and the faith that we're going to see how well we're doing next May. So that's very exciting, and I think just all of our internal spreadsheets, which are tracking all of the positive things we're doing and how it is helping, and all of the work we're doing to not reinvent the wheel here in Leavenworth, but adopt things other community corrections agencies are doing and bring them here to be successful. You can see that in our numbers each quarter when we come before you, and all the improvements are paying off. And we're also doing well, everything matched up on the adult side. We never seem to have issues with that budget, and we're just keeping on.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions for Jamie on the adult side?
I just got
This is Commissioner Stevens.
Go ahead.
I can't tell if I'm interrupting anybody. Sorry, anybody else. Same question on drugs and alcohol for this group, but also to drill down on that, once you give that answer, is there any trend in the drugs? Like, we've heard a lot about fentanyl and meth and certain drugs. Has there been any kind of trend in that area?
Well, 92.8% of all of the people on probation here are struggling with substance use disorder, and those are not including the people who recreationally self-medicate and who don't have a chemical addiction. Of course, fentanyl, opiates, those continue to be a problem. Methamphetamines, all of the major illicit drugs. I mean, there's really not been a change since the last quarterly report. We continue to use a 19-panel screen. We try to stay up to date and adjust whatever drug screen that we're using to reflect what we're seeing in the community, or if we're hearing that there are new synthetics, just trying to stay relevant, because as soon as we catch something, there's something else popping up in its place, and that's just the market. But we are working with the Guidance Center to begin offering on-site substance use treatment in the future, and make it more accessible to our high-risk population that's uninsured or underinsured, so we can keep people here working and getting the help that they need so they can stay in the community and deal with that in the community where treatment is readily available.
Thank you.
Second one, is there anything going on in the legislature now that concerns you with your department?
Not that I'm currently aware of. The only concern that we have does not include anything from the legislation. KDOC just wants us to change our funding formula on the juvenile side. We go and meet with our lobbyist as well as the other community corrections directors in Emporia in May. I'm not sure why we have to wait that long when so many of us have to work on our budgets, but this hit will come July 1st of 2024, next fiscal year. So it will have no budget impacts this year, but it is very alarming. If they have been planning to reduce our funding significantly on the juvenile side, they should have rolled something out and reduced it every year by a percentage. But it's going to be a huge budget hit. I responded to the president of our board that I don't know how, as community corrections agencies, we don't all have the same responsibilities under our umbrella. Just 2 years ago, juvenile intake was not our responsibility. And if the funding formula changes and it's IIP, probation, and juvenile intake, but my peers don't have juvenile intake, and we don't have IIP, and those decisions aren't up to us, who provides those services, but we're going to be losing 30% of our funding or 60% of our funding because we're not offering this, but we're offering other programs. I just don't understand how the state can put this back on an association of community corrections agencies and say, you guys decide amongst yourself. It's like we're being pitted against one another, and it just doesn't make sense. We don't even see on the adult side their calculations, and so I don't have any good updates for legislation, but it seems like last year we were supported by legislation. They gave us increases to match court services. But the other issue is when court services was given those pay enhancements, they were also given 70 new CSOs to address population concerns. We're not seeing those be addressed. We don't have the same level of support. And while some directors believe that this reduction of funding will stay within community corrections and our cost per unit for the kids on probation will go up, I don't believe that that is the intention. And I wonder, how much more of that money will go back to KDOC, or if they're going to offset our issues on the adult side with funding where our population continues to grow and be unaddressed.
Well,
And the state's bragging about all the money they got.
well,
That just confuses me.
Well, and for our agency, all of my people are dual. They're adult and juvenile. They're paid out of both budgets. How can you reduce our juvenile funding and not adjust the adult funding where the population has grown?
I guess we'll have to address that along the way.
Yep.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, thank
Any
you.
other questions for Jamie? Okay, then we'll just move right along. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Council on Aging.
I'll say one thing. I think Jamie does just an outstanding job in her position and working on these issues. We're very blessed to have her.
Yes, thank you.
I agree.
Council on Aging, come on down.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Q1 report for the Council on Aging is one of growth and innovation. I think I was thinking about that line from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what happened at the Council on Aging. So we have seen nothing but growth since the beginning of this year. A 32% increase in Meals on Wheels participation. That translates to about 87 new people. And I think that's getting the word out about that essential program. We've also seen a 4% increase in the number of transportation trips that we've taken since the beginning of the year. And we're attributing that to the creation of a work shuttle that we started in January. We started running a bus from North Leavenworth to South Leavenworth, making a loop, picking up folks starting at 7 in the morning, going to work. And so what that did was that freed up appointments for other folks to ride in the morning hours. And we're just seeing an influx of people who left the job market at the beginning of the pandemic going back to work because they have to. They retired and now, due to inflationary pressures, headed back to the job market, but may not have the same type of transportation that they had access to before. We've received about 51% already this year of the revenue we intend to bring in for the remaining of the year. So way ahead of schedule there and happy about that. But I think the biggest piece of data that we're seeing is about a 71% increase in the amount of people who are walking through the door every week at our new location as opposed to our other location. We averaged about 70 people. On a slow week, we're seeing about 135, with as many as nearly 300 every week over there. So we play what we call the leisure and learning room shuffle. We've already moved activities that started in one room. They've outgrown that room. We moved them to a different room. They've now outgrown that room, and they're in our biggest room. People are just in there all the time, which is a really great problem to have. We're running ragged over there, but we love it. It's exactly what we intended to happen, and it's what we're seeing there. So that's fun.
We already got to find them a bigger building.
No, it's working out great.
Into the evening. That's the next part that we're thinking.
Well, I'd rather hear that than, oh, we built this. And
Yeah.
No, it's
showing
great.
us.
Yeah.
We've seen 200, last year I think I told you we saw over 500 people we've never seen before. We've seen 249 people we've never seen before since January of this year. And it's not that they've just come to one thing. They're coming to multiple things, and that is a testament to my staff.
And I have to say that the staff and the volunteers, they're incredible, and they're the happiest group of people. I mean, they love, everybody in there loves their job, and it's obvious. You know, everyone, I mean, and the people who are there are smiling, the people who are accessing the services, but the staff and the volunteers, they are always upbeat and so just, it reflects the environment, and so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. We had 4 positions that we had open in Q1, and we had more applicants than we could interview for every one of those jobs, awesome. And just added 4 new great people to the staff that hit the ground running that we're super excited to have. We have our volunteerism is up back to pre-pandemic levels. We have about 120 active volunteers. We recognized our Meals on Wheels volunteers last week. Couldn't do that program without them, but really excited to see that folks are wanting to help and participate. So lots of good news. We did over 1,100 taxes for free. That was a 20% increase in the VITA tax program this year. We had 8 dedicated tax volunteers who just love to do taxes 8 hours a day, every day. So lots of great partnerships too. Recently you approved us having 2 doctoral occupational therapy students from St. Mary's in our building twice a week. Can't say enough good things about having that partnership and those kids. I guess they're kids, they're 20-somethings, in our building every week. That has been a tremendous lift for participants as well as staff. So, all good things.
Any questions for Connie?
Vehicles, everything's going good with vehicles?
Everything's going great. I took one of them. I got to drive my first county vehicle. 4 of us went to an age-positive conference yesterday hosted by Mark. Got to drive one of those into the city. Those are really nice. And everyone who rides in our transportation really love them. My mom moved in with me in January. She's 86. She rides our transportation about 3 times a week. And there's nothing like that in the community where she came from. And so to have that and have access for folks to do the things that they want to do later in their lives is an amazing opportunity.
Well, 6 or 8 years ago, you wouldn't have took one of them vehicles to Kansas City.
You wouldn't have came back. Let's
Or you might have made it partway there. I've never seen a fleet of vehicles that was so
They're
run
pretty
down.
dilapidated.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Commissioner Stephen, do you have any questions for Connie?
Well, I just have one comment. I just hope, Connie, I appreciate everything you've done and everything you're doing, but I hope that you are making sure that you send your folks down to the commissioner in the building there that have a lot of conversation.
Well, she comes to us. Imagine that. So she's involved in our building, and we see her quite a bit. She was actually serving meals to help our Meals on Wheels volunteers the other day. So we'll keep her door that active on her doorstep.
Well, that's awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
See you later, Connie. Thank you.
Thank you. I brought you the packet back from the March meeting yesterday. I'll get it to you.
And now we have our human resources.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mine will be short and sweet. There's a lot of things in HR we can't talk about.
There you go.
But I do want to make sure that everyone knows where we're at. So for Q1, we currently have about 434 employees. We focused this first quarter on compliance and auditing the files, making sure everything was in order, that we have all of our job descriptions and pay plans are in line and where we're at. And the event that we did for the employees the first quarter was Ashley and Jenna went around with cookies for Employee Appreciation Day and delivered those to each department and every location. So that was a fun event that we did. For the current quarter, we are currently working on transitioning over to a new payroll provider, and so I put some information in here about that. Our first paycheck is scheduled to go live in July. The employee event for this quarter will be a cookout that we are working on with Janet and Vicki, so we'll have that out on the lawn the end of May, so that's going to be really exciting. We want to have that before it gets too warm outside. Working on defensive driving courses for everyone that currently drives county vehicles, making sure that everyone is compliant and certified by the middle of June. And I'm also working with Larry to get all of our paper files over digital, and the new payroll provider will help with that as well. So we'll see some movement in some of our processes going over to be able to be completed and approved online. Going forward, I think a lot of our goals are going to be to create an environment where we attract really good talent and then we retain them, and we have a great premier employer where people can come and love where they work. And with that, just having a good experience for them when they come in, really focusing on wellness initiatives and rewarding people for good behavior, having a good environment, and then having things at their fingertips and resources and making sure everyone is aware of what's available to them.
Awesome.
You said we have 431?
434.
434. And is that's everything filled, or how many is vacant?
We have currently 9 openings right now that
9
we're recruiting
openings.
for. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We've actually hired more into the first quarter than we lost, so we're good.
Times have changed.
Any other questions for Monica? Mr. Commissioner Stephen?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Now we have Jamie. Come on down, EMS.
Jamie, number 2. Morning, Commissioners. Health Department or EMS, what would you like to start with?
Wherever you'd like to start.
We'll start with EMS.
Lead will follow.
I prepared quarterly report, standard format, budget statistics. As you can see, we're tracking pretty much on track with what 2022 looks like. So we've definitely bounced back from the 2020, 2021 and kind of leveled back off to right around that 12,000, 13,000 calls a year. Just response times, things of that. On page 4 is the total calls per geographical location. I've kind of kept that going so commissioners can kind of see where calls are generating within the county. I will remind commissioners that the High Prairie Township also includes, that's the standbys also out to the county shops. So when we're talking about total, when last call of the last ambulance in the county is available, that's where the last ambulance goes, to the center of the county. So that's where that 162 comes from. Vehicle maintenance, about 2 weeks ago we did strike a deer responding to a call. That ambulance is currently over at Vetters getting repaired. It will be able to be repaired, and hopefully we're expecting it back by the end of the week. It was pretty mild damage, just the front, cosmetic and things of that nature that was kind of wrong with it. So that will be fixed. We are still on track, hopefully, to receive our 2022 ambulance next month in May, and then we do still have our 2023 and 2024 ambulances on order, which we, again, will not see those. It's about an 18-month build time and lead time for all of those, so I'm glad we have those on order. We did receive 2 over the last quarter, 2 replacement. The supervisor and lieutenant's PAR vehicle to replace, and Admin 3's truck was replaced, and that's through the enterprise lease program. So those finally came in, and all the lettering is finally correct, and those are in service. So that's a good thing. We finally are at full staff. Last hiring was complete. Over the last quarter, we hired in 2 paramedics and 5 EMTs. They're all out and being trained up. So that's good. We certified relicensing during the last time period. The big thing is we went to a Kansas training at the beginning of March, and that is in regards to the information system. It's the data that we have to support to the state under all the statistics and things of that nature on every run that we go and do. So our EPCR is involved with that. And while we were there, the national EMS informational system is increasing from version 3.4 to 3.5, and it's a major kind of remodel and restructure. And what that has created is I've had to basically rewrite the entire EPCR for our agency. So over the last 3 weeks, it was a pretty tedious involvement on my side, since I'm kind of the one that understands that program and knows how to do it. I rewrote our EPCR, and I think it's going to be a good thing for our staff. One, we're going to be getting more accurate and more data collected. Some of the things that are going to be in there are related to asking questions on opiate and things of that nature. So a lot of the data that we weren't collecting, we will be collecting and putting into our EPCR and forwarding that to the state and national level. So that's a good thing. We did all the training, and our target date for the state wanted it done by the end of June. National said it had to be done by the end of the year, but we're going to implement it May 1. So awesome. We're kind of ahead of schedule on that, and I already did the training with all staff over the last 2 weeks, and I think we're ready to rock and roll with that. So lots of things have been happening. One of the big things that I want to kind of kudos, we have been placing just this last month into the county's flyer, the county's newsletter, the awards that we have been handing out. And I'm proud to say that just in the first quarter, we had 3 cardiac arrest saves. And when we say cardiac arrest saves, that doesn't mean we just get a return of circulation or a pulse in the field. These are actual individuals that went all the way to the hospital and were discharged from the hospital back home with quality of life. So just in the first quarter, we were able to have 3, 2 in their 40s and 1 in their 70s. So those are individuals that have potential for life-altering. That's something that is pretty significant, and we're going to be recognizing those in the newsletter as we go forward every quarter and every month if we receive those, to be able to put that out, because I think that's important. And some of that I put back to the equipment that we have on the trucks and how important it is. And that Lucas device, the CPR device that we have on there, we're equating a lot of that too, because the ease of use, what it provides and what it does, that is what is leading to these. So I think that's important to recognize. Any questions on the EMS report?
Just one.
Go ahead.
On these specialty vehicles, is this getting any better on the ordering? It's getting worse? So it's never going to be back to like it was?
Unfortunately, what we're finding, and it's even, I was nervous when we hit the deer, like Pat was telling me, who's my operations manager, a lot of times it's not necessarily the grill parts or this part of that. It's getting the lights and the specialty lights that have to be on the vehicles. Those are what sometimes are the lead times and the wait times. So we are doing a better job of having some of those in stock, just in our back. So if something burns out or whatnot, we have them to be able to just put them right back on the truck. So we had an extra set of fog lights. We had an extra set of some of those to be able to put them right back. And now we'll order and put them back into our stock. So we have them.
So it's parts availability too.
I'm sorry?
It's also a parts availability issue. But that's going to be standard 18 to 24 months to
The
order.
chassis are a big problem. You have to get your basically, when we are ordering what the manufacturer is saying, we have to get our name in on the order because, again, Ford or GM, whoever the chassis are coming for, they're only making so many chassis for ambulance conversions. So we're putting our names, and we're not the only in obviously doing this. All of the ambulance services now are ordering 2-3 years in advance of what they're going to be buying. So they're already bought up. So by the time you put your name in the hat for those, you're not buying a 2022 or 20. You're buying a 25.
Supply issues are a thing to stay then.
So we're trying to stay ahead of that curve. Like I said before, we're going to look at holding back the next ambulance, not the one that's going out here in the 2022, but the next ambulance that's going to go back. We're going to hold back. I talked to the administrator about holding that back, taking it out of service, not an ambulance, not anything else, but actually just holding it back because the trade-in value is not there, and putting it into reserve just in case. We get into that we would have an ambulance that's already lettered, it's already done. I get to the state, I reservice it, I recertify it, and we can put it back into play if needed. So we're trying to look at what's happening and what's going to play into advance, and that's one of the things. And it's also for parts. If it's something that we may have to rob a part off of that and use that until we can get a part in.
I think when we were able to get vehicles in a year or less, it wasn't as big of a deal. But, like you said, a deer strike, that's not our first deer strike in the last 6 months, actually. So you have something like that, and you have an ambulance out of service. And if it was like a worse accident where it was totaled, 2 years, you'll get your replacement. It's not an insurance issue; it's an availability issue. So I would expect that Jamie will be coming in here sometime in June, probably to order our 25 and maybe 26 ambulance, just so we can stay caught up.
We're going to have to. Can't call Enterprise and tell them we need an ambulance, huh?
Well, it wouldn't do us any good.
Does anybody, Mike, you have a question for Jamie?
Yeah. You're giving another report, though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll ask you after that one.
Okay. Moving on to the health department, again, standard statistics budget. Items to report, I wanted to kind of outline the ELC grant a little bit, and in that, kind of put some dollar figures to what we were able to do with that ELC grant. Total to date, and this includes the $100,000 we just approved for the parking lot, $333,496 has gone towards infrastructure projects at the health department in regards to radio replacement, complete radio replacement, security at the health department, putting in a prox door system, completely redoing conference room chairs, TVs, projectors, redoing all that. Computers, laptops, all the IS that was out at the health department has completely been brought up to the latest and greatest, so that's all been covered under that. A lot of our office supplies, standard office supplies, was part of that. Parking lot, uniforms, and then PAPRs, which is the air purifying systems that we used during the COVID response. And that leaves approximately just shy of $100,000 left for floor and painting that's going to happen out at the health department with that grant. So total in that grant was about $506,000, 922. So there was some overtime and different things that were also expended early on that was part of that grant. But it was about $500,000 that was found in grants that were able to complete projects that, again, had no impact to the local budget in regards to kind of keeping up that facility out there. So I really wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit today. Along with grants, the aid to local grants were submitted and on time. We're waiting to hear back. Usually that's right at the mid-June level when they finally announce from the state what we're going to receive. However, I do have some indications that have come in already from a few of them that our requests that had a little bit enhancement dollars into them are probably going to be approved this year. So that's a good thing in regards to what that will look like for the last half of this year, the first half at least, or next year, since again, those state grants are on the state fiscal years. So it kind of splits years. We were busy in February. February had our immunization at the beginning for the immunization grant. The feds and the state came in to do a audit of our immunization program. No deficiencies were found there. WIC had their state and federal grant audited. They came in again. That went very smoothly. And then at the end of February, we had the family planning audit with and there was about 8 auditors in our building for about 8 hours going through that. And we just received a letter on that they were very pleased. There's some little things, obviously, that have to be fixed at the state level in their program that we will adopt into ours, and then we'll be set with that as well. So I also assisted Todd Thompson's office and his staff with their DOJ grant, since I was the last one to do a DOJ grant here, and help them kind of get through that lengthy process of how to navigate the website and such. So he called over, and I kind of guided them on what they needed to do for that. And then we're back to attending some conferences. Some of the staff has to get back to some of the requirements, and now those are going to be back on in person. They went out to Manhattan for the Governor's Public Health Conference and also a billing seminar in Manhattan. So any questions with public health?
No, but if anybody hasn't seen the new conference room remodel, it's really nice, and the equipment is great. I mean, ergonomically, thumbs up. And
welcome anyone to come on out and kind of see, especially after the carpet and paint's in there, it's going to be really nice. So.
And it's going to be really nice when they get finished with that. So, and thanks for the tour.
Yep.
Any questions for Jamie? Commissioner Stephen?
Yeah, I have a couple. Jamie, thank you for everything you do out there. Much appreciated. Just let you know that. I don't know if this is an emergency management question or if this is a health department question, but we still have an emergency declaration in place for COVID. Is there any advantage of us leaving that in place, or we're still getting discounts on supplies and such, or is that something that can be taken down?
Yeah, I have staff that's actually at the Preparedness Summit. They're virtual this week, actually, and that was one of the topics. May 11th, the declaration from the federal side is coming down, and there's going to be a spin down of how things are going to cancel out. As of right now, it still allows us to get our supplies, get vaccine, get different things that are needed, and that's through EOC. Through Chuck, we still have that kind of going because, again, some nursing homes are able to benefit from that on some of their PPE. So as long as we have that in place right now, up until the point that it basically has to be taken down, there is some advantage for us, and some of the agencies here within Leavenworth County can still take advantage of that.
Okay, so we'll just wait to hear back from you, I guess, on that one.
Correct.
Second thing I have is when a woman or a girl comes to the health department and she's having difficulty with an unplanned pregnancy or issues related to pregnancy, you guys have resources, or do you refer them for help, or because I know Senator Marshall came to Leavenworth County and there's a new Sparrow clinic that's been, and they're sort of becoming sort of a resource for that kind of thing, but what does the health department do when somebody needs help with those kind of issues?
Sure. We have several programs out at the health department. The social worker has teen management program. There's a pregnancy management initiative program that we have. We have MCH. We have referral programs. There's numerous resources that we have. So if someone is pregnant, having issues, having any sort, if they get in contact with us, we kind of get them into the biggest hurdle is getting them out to the health department and show up to that appointment, and then we can get them into whatever programs that we have available, all the way through delivery, all the way through WIC, all the way through whatever it may be. We can assist them through that.
And can you work with these private clinics like Sparrow?
Yeah, we can do we work with them. They're part of the resources that we have available.
Okay. And last question is, the health department continues to have the policy that we do not count for abortion, correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jamie? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
And Tom, last but not least.
Commissioners, good morning, and thank you for the time. As I was sitting there, the community corrections report was quite sobering, and it reminded me of something that a mayor told me very early in my career, and that is, he looked at me and said, "Tom, one of the greatest social or rehabilitative programs in the world is a job." And as economic developers, that's really what one of our primary pushes are. We tend to get caught up in new business openings and ribbon cuttings and things along those lines, but at the end of the day, it's really about people and really about getting folks an opportunity to work and really allow them to be contributing members of society and whatnot. So that was really sobering to hear all that.
Paying taxes.
And paying taxes. There you go. Currently continue to work on the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which was identified and modified in the Planning Comprehensive Plan that you approved, I believe, at the beginning of this year or end of December, at least the update. Thus far, I've met with each of our primary cities within the communities, within the county. Over the next couple of weeks, I'd like to meet with each of the commissioners on a one-on-one basis to kind of really take your pulse on economic development in the future of where our growth may be relative to what you see in your experience. And again, the point of the Economic Development Strategic Plan is really to identify the desires of each of our communities, identify what the barriers to success are. Let's say they want to be X. Why aren't you X today? What are the barriers to get you there? Then create some strategies to overcome those barriers, implement those strategies, and ultimately, once we get there, we can market it like crazy and see if we can't make those things really come true in those particular communities. Continue to study the impacts, needs, and opportunities of the Panasonic development in DeSoto. Currently, after going to a number of meetings, there are a whole bunch of unknowns that are still involved in that project. Infrastructure is essentially getting identified, and immediate solutions to their project are being provided. Housing is still really up in the air as to what's going to be needed and where those employees are going to come from. There are a number of heat maps that suggest that the majority of those employees will come from within about 30 minutes of the facility, but they also go all the way out to an hour from the facility. Housing, however, is still, as you know, we're in a national housing crisis. But one thing that may help, at least in Leavenworth County, is I think about a week or two ago, Tonganoxie announced that Roush Coleman, a housing developer from Arkansas, will actually be building, I think, somewhere in the vicinity of about 120 homes, which in today's market technically classify as starter homes or moderate income homes, and those will go from somewhere between $250,000 and $315,000. So adding another 120 homes in the south part of the county can only benefit our contribution and our support of the Panasonic plant. Ancillary or supplier opportunities, that one's going to be up in the air for a while. We just don't know where those suppliers and co-companies will locate. However, as Panasonic is, not just Panasonic, but the developers of the business park that they'll be in, have really unveiled what the plans for their business park will be. It's 9,000 acres, so we're talking about a massive piece of ground that's going to be a massive business park. One has to consider, what are the benefits of being a Panasonic supplier and not being in that particular business park. I think we've got some great assets here in Leavenworth County, and in my experience, for example, back in the late 90s, I was on the team that brought Harley-Davidson's plant to Kansas City. It was amazing how many of the ancillary suppliers did not want to be right next to the plant, but they wanted to be some distance, 30, 45 minutes away. And it's amazing how much the notion of tornadoes factors into that decision, particularly from companies that come from both of the coasts. They seem to be, in my experience over the past 30 years, companies that are not from the Midwest absolutely believe we deal with tornadoes and rattlesnakes every single day. So that certainly factors into their site location decision. The Department of Commerce is putting together some teams and providing community updates, which we've certainly been a part of. And as Commissioner Steben, I think, mentioned at the last meeting, he, as well as I and a few others, have participated in the collaborative effort through the University of Kansas and Kansas State University that's really looking at this. I continue to work on relationship building and meeting with the communities within Leavenworth County, and also working with the communities on a couple of specific or special initiatives or special projects. One of those happens to be, I believe, next Wednesday. I'll be assisting the City of Basehor at their City Council planning retreat relative to all things economic development. Working on 2, possibly 3 grants at the moment. One is Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. This is through the U.S. Department of Energy. When we talk about grants, we typically talk about extremely high dollar projects. This one does not fall into that category, but it's somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 that essentially is for us to utilize and update some lighting and be a little more energy efficient here on county property. The CHIPS Act, this one is kind of iffy at this point. The CHIPS Act itself was installed by Congress really to assist in attracting and building semiconductor plants throughout the country. We do not have one, but there is a facet within the CHIPS Act that does allow for communities, and we happen to have a community that qualifies for significant funding, but for specific initiatives that I'm not sure that we can exactly live up to. And right now, this one's really in more of a fact-finding mission than anything else at this point. But the state has asked us to consider and possibly be a co-applicant with them relative to an application throughout the CHIPS Act. So this is something that's kind of ongoing. And I should know more here in the next couple of days about what those requirements are and if it's really even feasible to pursue. And finally, assisting Public Works and Buildings and Grounds with a charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program, and this would be for charging stations on county property. I'm also preparing for ICSC. This is the world's largest retail show that happens every year. I think representatives from the county have attended at some point in our history, but this is really an opportunity to get in front of and identify what local developers, national retailers are really making moves and identifying which ones would have a potential interest in properties that we have in Leavenworth County. It's also an excellent means. It's interesting that in going to this event for I don't know how many years, I did not attend my first year here, but I have attended for over 20 years. It's amazing how many Kansas City developers and businesses are there, and it's just about easier to meet them all out there at the event than it is to chase them down here at home. Also, I believe on May 9th, I'll be at Wichita State University, their Center for Economic Development and Research. They're putting together their manufacturing forecast for the next couple of years. I think this will be really fascinating. Right now, economic development as a whole nationwide is really focused on manufacturing and industrial type projects and whatnot. So it'll be absolutely fascinating to kind of see what their take is on their forecast and their projections of what is coming. Particularly because right now we still remain at about full employment, not just within the county, but nationwide. And, I've talked about recession, I think, every time that I've come up here in the past year. Right now, it seems like economists are really leaning more towards some sort of a recession than they maybe ever have. Thus far in 2023, we've seen layoffs. The layoffs have pretty much been limited to the technology sector that maybe outgrew their goals or outgrew what they were anticipating, or didn't perform, rather, not outgrew, didn't perform to the level that they thought they were. But now we're starting to see a little bit of wavering in the manufacturing sector as well, with 3M announcing a number of sizable layoffs yesterday. So it will be interesting to see kind of what what WSU believes is the forecast for manufacturing over the next couple of years. Base grant, we applied for a base grant with the City of Lansing, I think at the end of last year, the first of this year, for the first iteration of the base grants. State of Kansas got well over $100 million to divvy out for building a stronger economy program. We were not selected in the first round. After the first round, the City of Lansing wanted to continue and apply for the second round with our support. Now, not with our financial support. The funding matrix changed for the second round, where the county is not providing matching funds. They're entirely being provided by Lansing. But we did participate, and I think we helped them out a bit, and they provided a great application as well. But they were awarded $1.3 million, formally noticed yesterday, for sewer infrastructure at McIntyre and K7, which opens up a pretty large parcel of ground for future development, and certainly makes that much more palatable and much more interesting to potential investors, developers, and projects. I'm serving on the Industrial Site Visioning Committee. That's the search committee to identify the next business park in Leavenworth County. Doing that with the Port Authority and LCDC, and we've only had one meeting so far. I would anticipate that they will have some sort of a recommendation or suggestion or favored site probably toward the end of the year. I don't think this is going to drag on forever, but I think we're going to have something probably at the end of the year that identifies kind of where that next thing could be. There is not a mechanism that has how to pay for it, but it is an identifying measure. Also meeting with a number of property owners within the county who've contacted me, basically asking the big omnibus question of, what should I do with my land? Who would be interested in this if we decide to sell the property that we've had forever? So going through a number of those meetings with a number of existing business owners that may be thinking about selling at some point. Serve on the Marked Goods Movement Committee, that's basically logistics. And in the coming months, I will serve and represent the county at the KCATA, KCI Transit Advisory Stakeholder Committee, which will be looking at how do we best get people to and from the airport and logistics that have to do with the new airport on the Kansas City side, but that certainly has an impact in Leavenworth County as well. As I mentioned, employment still generally holding steady. But then as we look at our market snapshot there on the last couple of pages of the market segments that are most important to us here in the county, the industrial side, our vacancy is essentially zero. We're pretty much booked up, aside from maybe some very small spaces. In plain English, we somehow need buildings that can accommodate the desire of the market and demand for spaces in excess of 60,000 square feet, all the way up to 1 million square feet. projects over the past 20 years have gotten significantly larger, which I think is really why there's a bit of an interest in identifying where the next business park could potentially be, because in all likelihood, whoever occupies the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park, there's a pretty good chance that that would be occupied by a single user, just based on the size of projects that are out there today, where I think the initial visioning was that it would probably be 5 or 10 businesses that do their own thing and whatnot, but really just the size and scope of projects that we're seeing today, and certainly LCDC, they're much more on the industrial side, or they're exclusively on the industrial side, but the projects that are coming to their attention are absolutely huge. We'll put it that way. So I think it does make sense to at least have an idea as to where that next business park could potentially be, as again, projects have definitely grown and seem to be getting larger. On the retail side, our vacancy is about 2.5%, and right now we have a bit, well, not necessarily an inventory because vacancy is only 2.5%, but rents have increased over the past year. Retail continues to generally be in flux, and now retail is already in flux because of technology and COVID and buying patterns and things along those lines. But now nationwide retailers are dealing with something that they really hadn't thought would be a significant problem, and that is theft. Theft right now in this country amongst retailers is absolutely going rampant, and we may actually see the pushing forth of establishing what's called dark stores. And the grocery came up with that a number of years ago, and a few have implemented it, not a lot at this point. But a dark store is essentially to where, let's say, an electronics store would have a store where you never go inside it. All you do is order your stuff, you go pick it up, or they deliver it to you from that particular store. So as a means to protect their own investments, to eliminate or to reduce the amount of theft within retail stores, we may start seeing some of that. Now, I think that's a bit out there. I don't think that's an immediate concern, but I think here in the next couple of years we may see much more of that. The office market, our vacancy within the county is about 11%. We have a negative net absorption of 25,000 square feet over the past year. What that really means is that demand is less than supply. This is a national concern, not a Leavenworth concern or Leavenworth County concern. This isn't anything that we've done. This is a national thing, partly due by COVID and work from home initiatives and things along those lines. To put that in perspective, right now, Kansas City Metro office space is currently 11%, about where we are, which equates to 14.8 million square feet of vacant office space in the Kansas City Metro. That's a lot of space, which is 2 million more than a year ago. In addition to the 14 million that's currently vacant, an additional 2.6 million square feet is currently being leased, but the leasee is attempting to sublease that out to somebody else to use even less space than they have under contract at the time. Again, this isn't unique to us or a region. By contrast, this is a bit of an extreme, but the Chicago area has 79 million square feet of empty office space as we sit this morning. So again, work trends have changed. Where people work has changed. We may see some of that come back as downtowns are still popular, and especially among the millennial generation. But as far as office space goes, there's really no great solution. Relative to multifamily housing, right now we've got 1,360 units within the county. Vacancy is about 11%, and rents have gone up just a little bit over the past year. Multifamily will continue to be multifamily. I think we'll see some additional interest in that particular market segment as the Panasonic project continues to develop. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I think new housing developers and builders will take an interest within our county and our proximity to Panasonic. Another one of those, I mentioned Roush Coleman earlier, but Hake Brothers is a New Mexico community housing or home builder. They've actually taken an interest in a couple of developments in Leavenworth County as well, one in Leavenworth, one in Basel, and we should be seeing their efforts here shortly. So a number of shifts in the economic development outlook, I guess. Many things hold constant, but we are seeing some interest from quite a few different parties right now. It's just a very, very odd market that we're in right now, in a very odd time in the course of our country's history. But with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Tom?
Yeah, on the industrial site visioning committee, how large tract of ground are you looking?
We haven't really gotten to that part, but right now we've just kind of laid out some ground rules about how we're going about this. And there are going to be several educational sessions from real estate developers that come in from around the metro, not just local, kind of talking about what they're seeing nationwide or within their markets, what's attractive, what types of services, utilities, and things along those lines. So there's certainly an educational effort before we really get to that point. But in just my anecdotal observations and some meetings with large business park operators I had back in October, it seems that bigger is kind of the thing right now. So I would say probably 300 acres is probably the minimum.
It doesn't exist, though.
Right. You'd have
Close
to that.
Close to the city.
Not in city limits.
Right.
Where you're going to, because you got to have
Not
sewer.
with the infrastructure,
Yeah,
right.
you don't have the infrastructure.
Exactly.
To
Exactly.
me,
And
there's
in
only
any
one
kind
place,
of
it's County Road 1.
in any kind of smart or intuitive development is at least going to have to be right next to a city and tap into those existing city utilities and infrastructure and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
amount of gas.
exactly.
Water.
So I don't think it's feasible to
Sewer.
drop it just out in the middle of
No.
of whatever.
Right.
That does not make sense because that's
If you just look around, the tracts of ground don't exist.
exactly.
So,
I have a question,
Sure.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
When you're on this industrial site committee, I strongly believe that Leavenworth County needs to have rail access because we've turned down so many projects because we didn't have rail access. Is that something your committee is taking into account?
Absolutely. That actually came up at the very first meeting. And again, we're barely into this, but that actually was a topic in the beginning. And I believe we're going to have some folks from the railways come speak with us as well.
Okay, another couple of questions on the base grant.
Yes.
I know earlier Tonganoxie had also put an application in. Did they apply for anything this time, or have they communicated?
I don't believe that they did. If they did, it was completely independent.
Okay, so not something you know about.
Correct.
On the retention, one thing we know that you came on and we were trying to get you to be in a position where you were working with the Port Authority and the LCDC and not, we're not duplicating.
Right.
Can you kind of reflect on how that situation's all working out? And the other thing is retention of current employers and industry and jobs.
Absolutely. No, I think my relationship with the Port Authority and LCDC has gone pretty well. As you know, we created essentially a column chart of roles and responsibilities and duties, and we do get together and kind of put our heads together on occasion on particular issues. But thus far, I think that's going pretty well. Where we've kind of identified what each of us does. As far as the retention of businesses and whatnot, yes, I have a plan for the summer of what I want to do relative to meeting with some existing businesses. Additionally, LCDC, they've hired an additional person and one of her responsibilities is business retention. So I think she's out actually hitting the streets now and knocking them dead. Knocking on doors and meeting with existing industrial businesses as well, just to make sure that they're here, happy, and growing.
Any other questions for Tom?
Our labor pool, how are we sitting on that as opposed to other communities?
The question was, how's our labor pool? I think we're probably in a very similar boat to everybody else, right? Or actually, I know we are. There still remains to be more available jobs in this country than there are job seekers, and it's tough. hiring used to be a fun activity. Now it is really not. It's tough. It's absolutely tough. But we continue to export a lot of jobs. A lot of folks that live within the county go other places during the day, and that's one of the things that we're trying to combat and say we need to make some stuff here that keeps people and families and whatnot here in the county.
Our area is negatively impacted by the lack of, just in general, and to the extent that I was just listening in on a workforce partnership meeting yesterday, and our WIOA funds are yet going to be reduced because we don't, because of the situations that we have that we're working with. So that's going to negatively impact the ability of the workforce partnership and the people that are trying to work on helping people find employment or keep employment. So, but we have a really excellent. I just have to give a shout out to our executive director for the workforce partnership, because she is amazing at obtaining grants to supplement the losses that we're experiencing as a region, and that's our 3-county area. And it's incredible what we're losing to other communities in funding. So,
absolutely,
by no fault of our own. Any other questions for Tom? No? Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to drop off because I'm going to hit the Texas Economic Development Conference.
Oh, good.
So I will talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Okay, we have presentations and discussion items. Do you have anything for us today, Commissioner Culberson?
I was going to give you guys an update on some of the things I'm working on. One, in this task force with Senator Tyson and several other legislators. We're trying to keep a finger on this 2036 bill. It's morphed several times. Adding the homestead and then taking the homestead out, adding the Genesis bill, pulling the Genesis bill out. So it keeps changing. So we're trying to keep a finger on that and seeing what's actually going to happen. LAVTR, I reached out to several other cities and counties. I've got probably 2 or 3 dozen other cities and counties that would like to join us if we wanted to pursue legal action to try to get the LAVTR from the state. So I'm putting that together. Pilot checks. Commissioner Smith gave me an article from the Sentinel a couple weeks ago. I reached out to the firm that's representing the county that lost some land to an Indian tribunal property about getting pilot checks. And, I've been working on that for 3 or 4 years for Leavenworth County. So we're building a coalition of several counties that have the same issue. So far, we've got half a dozen that are interested also in going in on us with pursuing that in D.C. Pipeline, we got the new attorney now, so I'm working with her to establish some sort of a resolution to rebury high-pressure gas lines in the county. We got the verbiage almost ready, I think, to present that. And then also with the new counselor, we're going to look at junk properties, enforcing cleaning up junk properties with the current non-home rule authority that we have to see how we can address some of these properties that have been problem children for years. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Culberson also attended the MARC meeting yesterday.
Oh, yeah, and that.
I attended the MARC meeting. Also, last Saturday night, I attended the Leavenworth County 4-H Foundation Awards banquet or dinner. MARC meeting yesterday. Got Bayshore City Council tonight. Have JCAB tomorrow in Anderson, and have Fairmount Township tomorrow night. And then we have Monday night. We have the city of Tonganoxie.
Okay.
That's it.
Everybody's busy. Okay, let's see. Last week, as Connie said, I worked with the Council on Aging volunteers and the staff to serve lunch to the Meals on Wheels volunteers. It was really well attended, and the people were very pleased with the food and the recognition the volunteers were. And then on Saturday, I and others participated or went to the Women in History event that was put on by some community members, and it was a well-attended and very informative event. It was a lot of fun. I can say it was just really a lot of fun. And so anybody that didn't get to make it to that, sorry about your luck. And let's see, I did the Workforce Partnership yesterday morning, and then attended the City Commission meeting last evening, and as I said, yay, Big Brothers and Big Sisters is coming to Leavenworth, the city of Leavenworth, and I couldn't be happier. I have a Kansas City Area Transit Authority meeting today, had another one last week, and today is the Board of Directors meeting, so I'll be leaving to get to that, I hope, here in a few minutes. On Saturday, the Gala of Hope is scheduled for our community, and that is the fundraiser for the Community of Hope Shelter. And if you have not had an opportunity to attend or get tickets for that, you might consider seeing if there are tables available, because it's sold out. I see.
Sold out. Okay.
Commissioner Hingela is.
Madam Chairperson, I got squeezed in at the end.
Oh well.
So.
But you can still donate.
I'm glad. Yes, you can still donate.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be an incredible opportunity for people to see and hear about the great things that are happening with the shelter. And let's see, kind of moving down the road, I think it's sold out, but there may be little tickets available here and there. Is going to be the Casas Night at the Races is next weekend, so people might want to consider whether or not they want to participate in that. But other than that, I don't have anything else. So
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion in a second. Begin voting with Mr. Paulson.
Aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.